Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight, our chronicle covers the underbelly of the world, not just the metaphorical darkness of crime, but the literal damp, festering underbelly of Skyrim. We are heading to Riften, the city of falling leaves and rising crime rates, to uncover the 15 brutally honest truths about the Thieves Guild. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a casual stroll through the Ratway without contracting ataxia, bone break fever, and a sudden case of getting stabbed in the kidney, all within the first 30 seconds. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as always, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. I love imagining these stories echoing across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Dragonborn stands on the wooden planks of the Riften marketplace. Above, the skies are bruised purple, typical of the Rift's eternal autumn, and the air is thick with the scent of falling leaves and the distinct fishy tang of the lake. But we aren't here to buy vegetables from Branchet, or listen to Madesi complain about his jewellery supplies. We are looking down. We are looking at the dark, gated tunnels that run beneath the city streets like varicose veins. This brings us to our first brutal truth. The Ratway is just a glorified sewer. There is a certain romanticism attached to the idea of a thieves' guild. You imagine shadowy rooftop chases, secret knocks on mahogany doors, and hidden palaces adorned with velvet and stolen gold. But in Skyrim, the reality is significantly wetter. To join the legendary organisation that supposedly runs this city, you have to willingly descend into a drainage pipe. The journey begins not with a test of wit, but with a test of your gag reflex. As you unlatch that iron gate on the lower deck of the city, the first thing that hits you isn't the allure of mystery, it is the smell. Imagine the combined odour of stagnant lake water, rust, decaying skeever carcasses, and the accumulated refuse of an entire city that simply flushes its problems downward. That is the air freshener of the Ratway. The stones here are permanently slick, covered in a biofilm of algae and grime that makes stealth less about moving silently and more about trying not to slip and faceplant into a puddle of questionable origin. It is a humid, suffocating atmosphere where the torches burn low, struggling for oxygen in the thick dampness. As we creep forward, boots squelching softly on the mossy stone, we encounter the welcoming committee. It's not a master thief guarding the threshold. It's usually a pair of low-level thugs named Druff and Hunan Black-Skeever. These two are the gatekeepers of this prestigious underworld. They stand around a burning barrel warming their hands and discussing whether or not to mug the next person who walks by. It is hardly the elite security force one would expect protecting the headquarters of a mafia. In fact, their presence highlights the sad state of the guild's perimeter defence. They aren't members, they are just squatters who haven't been evicted yet. Druff will inevitably try to extort a toll from you. Face it, the Ratway is our territory, he says, which is a bold claim for a man living in a hallway that smells like wet dog. When the Dragonborn inevitably declines this generous offer and violence ensues, we see the first layer of the Ratway's brutality. Bodies don't disappear here, they just become part of the clutter. You step over them, careful not to knock over the buckets or alert the next group of vagrants. Moving deeper, the architecture tells a story of neglect. The Ratway is a maze of crumbling masonry and makeshift bridges. It is a hazard to navigate even if you aren't being attacked. There are bear traps sitting in the middle of hallways, seemingly placed at random, and oil slicks on the floor that look like shimmering, deadly rainbows. Who placed these traps? It feels less like a strategic defense system, and more like the guild just left their junk lying around. This brings us to a fascinating piece of fan debate regarding the very structure of Riften. Many in the community theorise that the Ratway wasn't always a sewer, but rather the original street level of the city. The theory suggests that Riften is slowly sinking into the soft, marshy soil of the lake edge. What we know as the Ratway today might have been the bustling merchant district of a previous era, now swallowed by the earth and the water, leaving the current city to be built on top of the ruins. It adds a layer of gothic tragedy to the location. You aren't just walking through a sewer, you're walking through the drowned ghost of the city, repurposed by those who have nowhere else to go. And speaking of those with nowhere else to go, we have to talk about Gian the Fist. Deep in the winding tunnels, past the aggressive skeevers that are the size of small ponies, You find a man who has decided that his best life involves living in a room full of bear traps with a bedroll on the floor. Jian is a unique fixture in the lore because he carries a very specific item, the gloves of the pugilist. This is a core in-game fact that every unarmed build relies on. These gloves are the only guaranteed item in the base game that carries the Fortify Unarmed enchantment. It implies that Jian was perhaps a prizefighter who fell from grace, or maybe an enforcer who got too violent even for the surface world. The existence of people like Jian, or the mad chef Kanjaka who attacks you with an iron war axe while screaming about being the gourmet, paints a vivid picture of the Ratway's true demographic. It is an asylum. The Thieves Guild doesn't just hide in the shadows, they hide behind a wall of the mentally unstable and the socially exiled. To get to the guild, you have to murder your way through a homeless shelter for violent criminals. It's grim work. It strips away the veneer of the gentleman thief before you even meet a single member of the organisation. We must also acknowledge the darkness of the environment. I don't mean the lighting, though that is also terrible. I mean the mood. The Ratway is oppressive. The sound design here is masterful. The constant rhythmic dripping of water is a form of torture. Drip, drip, drip. It echoes off the cold stone, masking footsteps and creating a sense of paranoia. You're constantly checking your corners, not because the guards are looking for you, but because a lowlife with an iron dagger is hiding in a dark alcove, waiting to end your adventure for a handful of septims. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the book Beggar, which can actually be found in the Ratway itself on a table in a room filled with sleeping mats. The book details the life of a carrier of the mild disease known as the Droops, but more importantly, its placement here suggests that the inhabitants of the Ratway are literate or at least bored enough to read. The irony of reading a book about beggars while living as a beggar in a sewer is palpable. It's these small environmental storytelling details that Bethesda excels at, placing a mirror in front of the NPCs even in their lowest moments. Navigating the Ratway requires a suspension of disbelief regarding hygiene. The Dragonborn wades through water that is certainly contaminated with everything you can imagine, yet we splash through it, weapons drawn, hunting for the entrance to the Ragged Flagon. We pass levers that lower drawbridges, mechanisms that seem far too complex for the current inhabitants to maintain. This reinforces the idea that this place was built by much more capable hands, perhaps the same hands that built the grand stone aqueducts of the city above. The guild didn't build this fortress, they just infested it, like the skeevers they share the space with. As you finally approach the heavy reinforced door that leads to the guild's tavern, you have to pause and look at what you've just traversed. You've killed vagrants, dodged bear traps, waded through sewage, and likely contracted a disease that reduces your lockpicking skill. This is the barrier to entry. It is a brutal filter. The guild doesn't need a bouncer because the architecture itself hates you. The Ratway weeds out the clean, the noble, and the faint of heart. Only those willing to get their hands and boots and armour filthy are allowed to knock on the door of the Ragged Flagon. But as we reach for that door handle, expecting a bustling hub of criminal masterminds on the other side, we are setting ourselves up for the second brutal truth. We expect a hive of scum and villainy, a vibrant underground economy. But as the heavy wood creaks open and the loading screen fades, the reality of what lies beyond the sewer is even more disheartening than the sewer itself. The smell doesn't get much better, and the company, well, let's just say the glory days are long gone. The heavy door to the Ragged Flagon groans open, the sound of rusted hinges cutting through the damp silence of the Ratway. You step through, shaking the muck off your boots, expecting to be hit by a wall of noise, shouted wages, clinking tankards, the raucous laughter of master thieves recounting their latest heists. Instead, you are met with a hollow, echoing quiet. This brings us to our second brutally honest truth. The Ragged Flagon is depressingly empty. It is essentially a flooded cistern converted into a bar, which is about as sanitary as it sounds. The centre of the room is dominated by a circular pool of dark, murky water, crisscrossed by wooden walkways that look like they were salvaged from a shipwreck. The lighting is dim, provided by a few sputtering candles and the eerie glow of bioluminescent mushrooms growing in the cracks of the stone. The atmosphere isn't dangerous or exciting, it is simply sad. It feels like a party that ended 3 hours ago, where only the people too drunk to go home are left staring into their cups. Scanning the room, you can count the members on one hand. There is Dirge, the bouncer, whose name is as lively as his personality. He leans against a pillar, flexing his muscles and threatening to smash your face in if you cause trouble, which seems optimistic considering there is no one here to cause trouble with. There is Vekel the man, the bartender, wiping down a counter that hasn't seen a clean rag in the 4th era. And then there are the members, Vipir the Fleet, Thryn, Sinric Endel and Niruin. They sit at separate tables or lean against walls, nursing drinks, looking less like a criminal syndicate and more like a support group for unemployed henchmen. The vibe is lethargic. There is no plotting, no scheming. Occasionally someone coughs. Vekel might complain about the lack of good ale. It is a stark contrast to the dark brotherhood sanctuary, which despite being a cult of murderers, actually feels like a community. The flagon feels like a waiting room for purgatory. The guild isn't just down on its luck, it is on life support. This emptiness is a core in-game fact that strikes new players hard. You hear rumours of the fearsome Thieves Guild all across Skyrim, but the reality is a handful of guys living in a hole. The economy of the flagon is non-existent. The shelves behind Vekel are bare, save for a few dusty bottles. The vault is notoriously empty, a literal room with unlocked chests containing nothing but cobwebs. This is a visual storytelling masterclass by the developers to show, rather than just tell, how far the guild has fallen. They aren't hiding their poverty, they are wallowing in it. Let's talk about Vekel the man for a moment. He is the heart of this depressed organism. He stands there day in and day out serving watered-down mead to the same 4 people. There is a fascinating, obscure lore tidbit involving Vekel and a specific book called Shadowmarks. While Delvin Mallory wrote it, you can often find Vekel reading or keeping a copy close by. It implies he is the keeper of the code, the one who has to explain to the few newcomers how not to die. He also has a unique quest to retrieve 4 journals of Arundel, a necromancer in Ingvild. It's a strange request for a bartender, to send you hunting for the diaries of a ghost-obsessed pervert, but it shows that even the barkeep is desperate for some kind of side hustle. The guild isn't paying the bills, so Vekel has to outsource fetch quests just to make ends meet. The poverty here is palpable. Take a look at the armour the members are wearing. It's the standard Thieves Guild leather. Functional, sure, but tattered. It's a far cry from the glass and ebony armour you might expect elite criminals to sport. They are wearing their uniforms not out of pride, but because they probably can't afford anything else. Thryn, an ex-bandit, often laments the lack of violence, seemingly bored out of his mind. He left a bandit clan for this. At least bandits get fresh air and the occasional mammoth cheese bowl. Here, he gets to stare at a pool of dirty water and listen to Dirge practice his intimidating glares. There is a fan theory that suggests the water in the centre of the ragged flagon is actually the source of the guild's bad luck, or rather, a symptom of it. The cistern is connected to the sewers, and the stagnant water represents the stagnation of the guild itself. Some players speculate that the water levels in the cistern rise and fall with the guild's fortune, though this is likely just a trick of the light and the imagination. However, the symbolism is potent. The guild is drowning. They are literally living in the drain of the city. We must also address the face sculptor who eventually moves down here. Galathil acts as a plastic surgeon for the criminal underworld. Her presence is the only thing that adds a touch of high fantasy weirdness to the tavern. She sits on a pile of rags surrounded by bloody tools, offering to rearrange your face for 1,000 gold. It's gruesome, yet it fits perfectly. Where else would a back alley fleshcrafter set up shop? It certainly wouldn't be in the Cloud District. Her presence implies that people do come down here to disappear, to change their identities, but the guild is too weak to capitalise on it. They just let her squat in the corner, probably happy for the company. The emptiness of the flagon also serves a gameplay purpose, of course. It is a blank canvas. As the Dragonborn completes special jobs, the flagon changes. Vendors move in, banners are hung, the vault begins to fill, but this initial state is crucial for setting the stakes. You aren't joining a powerhouse, you're joining a failing startup. You're the venture capitalist, but instead of investing money, you are investing stolen candlesticks and labour. When you walk up to Brynjolf in the marketplace, he sells you a dream of wealth and power, but when you walk into the flagon, you see the lie. You see Niruin practicing his archery on a target that looks like it's been rotting for a decade. You see Vipir the Fleet talking about his past exploits, because he has no current ones. I once ran all the way from Windhelm to Riften, he boasts. That's great, Vipir, but can you pay your tab? The nostalgia in the room is thick enough to cut with a dagger. Everyone is living in the past because the present is unbearable. Even the layout of the room reinforces this isolation. The tables are spaced far apart. The acoustics are terrible. Conversations die quickly in the damp air. It's hard to build camaraderie when you have to shout across a cistern of sludge. This is not the cosy, warm hearth of the Companions' Jorvaska, where mead flows and songs are sung. This is a cold, wet hole where dreams go to die. As you navigate the rickety walkways to the back room to meet the leadership, you pass the training room, which is essentially a few chests with locks on them. It's pathetic. It's like a university where the library has no books. The guild has lost its infrastructure. They have lost their network. They are a skeleton crew operating a ghost ship, and this depressing scene sets the stage perfectly for your recruitment. If the guild were thriving, they wouldn't look twice at a random adventurer wandering in from the sewers. They would have standards. They would have a vetting process. But because the chairs are empty and the coffers are dry, the bar for entry has been lowered significantly. In fact, as we're about to see, the recruitment process is less of a rigorous trial and more of a desperate plea for help. Brynjolf isn't looking for a master thief. He's looking for a warm body with a pulse and a functioning pair of hands. The Dragonborn has navigated the sewers, survived the gauntlet of homeless pugilists, and witnessed the sad reality of the ragged flagon. Now, we turn our attention to the man in the red hair and the distinct accent that sounds like he's trying to sell you a used carriage with 3 wheels. This brings us to our third brutally honest truth. Brynjolf's recruitment standards are suspiciously low. Let's rewind to the Riften marketplace. You arrive in town, a complete stranger, clad perhaps in heavy iron armour, carrying a 2-handed warhammer that screams, "Subtlety is not my forte." Yet Brynjolf approaches you immediately. "Never done an honest day's work in your life for all that coin you're carrying, eh, lad?" He says this even if you literally just made all your money chopping wood for Hod in Riverwood. It's a canned line, a desperate hook. He doesn't care who you are. He just needs someone, anyone, to do a job that apparently none of his elite guild members can handle. The job itself is laughably simple, a distraction, a plant. You are tasked with stealing a silver ring from Medici's strongbox and placing it in Branche's pocket. This is the grand entrance exam for the most feared criminal organisation in Skyrim. Stealing a piece of jewellery from a stall while everyone is looking at the guy shouting about magical elixirs. It feels less like mission, impossible, and more like a prank played by bored teenagers. But here is the kicker. You can fail. You can fail spectacularly. You can get caught picking the lock. You can get caught reverse pickpocketing the ring. You can get arrested, thrown in jail, and serve your time. And when you return to Brynjolf, does he tell you to get lost? Does he banish you for incompetence? No. He sighs, looks you in the eye and says, "Well, you lost the ring, but I like your enthusiasm." Enthusiasm? For getting arrested? This is the core in-game fact that exposes the guild's desperation. Pass or fail, smooth criminal or clumsy oaf, Brynjolf invites you to the Ratway. "You've got the spark," he says. "What spark? The spark of mediocrity?" The bar is on the floor. If you have a pulse and are morally flexible enough to frame an innocent dark elf merchant, you are management material. This desperation points to a deeper issue within the guild's hierarchy. Brynjolf is the second in command, acting as the field manager, because the actual guildmaster is busy brooding. More on him later. Brynjolf is overworked. He's running the scam in the market, he's managing the flagon, he's trying to keep the lights on. He doesn't have time to scout for talent. He sees a protagonist-shaped entity and thinks, great, fresh meat. There is an obscure lore tidbit found in the book The Fall of the Snow Prince, which isn't directly about the guild, but often found on shelves in thief-adjacent locations. It speaks of the collapse of a great civilization. In a way, Brynjolf is the administrator of a collapsing civilization. He's hiring contractors because his employees are useless. Look at the crew we met in the flagon. Would you trust Dirge to plant a delicate ring? He'd probably eat it. Would you trust Vipir the Fleet? He'd steal it and run to Windhelm. You, the stranger, are the most competent option by default simply because you haven't failed them yet. The community often jokes about this dragonborn privilege. You become the listener of the Dark Brotherhood, the Archmage of the College, and the Harbinger of the Companions all within a week. But with the Thieves Guild, it feels particularly egregious because thievery requires a specific skill set. You can brute force your way through a dungeon, but you can't brute force a lockpick, unless you have the skeleton key, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Yet the guild accepts a heavy armor barbarian just as readily as a sneak thief. It ruins the immersion slightly, or rather it recontextualizes the immersion. The guild is so broken they need muscle more than they need finesse. There's a fan theory that Brynjolf actually knows you are the Dragonborn, or at least someone of destiny, long before you do, or at least before he lets on. He has eyes everywhere. Perhaps he isn't hiring a thief, he is hiring a nuclear option. He knows the guild is cursed, literally, and he needs an anomaly, a hero to break that curse. So he doesn't care if you can pick a pocket. He cares if you can survive the supernatural nightmare that is about to unfold. He is recruiting a tank for a raid, not a rogue for a heist. Once you survive the Ratway and make it to the Flagon, Brynjolf gives you your next task, shakedowns. Deadbeats, he calls them. Kirava, Bercy Honeyhand and Helga. Again, notice the shift. He isn't asking you to steal a diamond from the Jarl's bedroom. He is asking you to go beat up shopkeepers for protection money. This is thuggery, plain and simple. It confirms that the Thieves Guild is currently operating as a low-level mafia racket. They are collecting debts to pay the rent, and even in this task, Brynjolf holds your hand. He gives you dirt on all of them. Talk to Talon Jai about Kirava's family. Smash Bercy's urn. Threaten Helga with her promiscuous statue. He does all the intelligence work for you. You are just the delivery mechanism for his blackmail. It makes you wonder, why doesn't he just do it himself? He's clearly capable. The answer is likely that he can't leave the Flagon for too long, because he's the glue holding the pathetic operation together. If he leaves, Mercer Frey might accidentally sell the furniture. The ease of entry into the guild devalues the title of thief. In Oblivion, the Thieves Guild felt like a secret society with a code. You had to find them. You had to follow the rules of the Grey Fox. In Skyrim, they find you and the only rule is don't kill people. Unless you have to, I guess, whatever, just bring the gold. Brynjolf's recruitment pitch is the equivalent of a help wanted sign taped to a telephone pole. But there is a hidden brilliance to this low barrier. It lures you in. It makes you feel special, even when you haven't earned it. I like your style, lad. It's flattery. Brynjolf is a con artist, remember? He is conning you into saving his organisation. He sells you the fantasy of the guild, the riches, the armour, the influence. He doesn't mention the curse, the betrayal, or the fact that you'll be doing all the work while everyone else drinks. He hooks you with a simple ring job, and before you know it, you're bound by oath to a Daedric prince. So, the next time Brynjolf calls you over in the market, don't think of it as a recognition of your stealth skills. Think of it as a cry for help from a middle manager who is desperately understaffed and drowning in debt. You aren't the chosen one. You're just the only applicant who didn't trip over their own feet in the Ratway. And as we settle into our new role as the guild's errand boy, we start to realise who is actually pulling the strings. Because it certainly isn't Brynjolf, and it definitely isn't the man waiting in the cistern. No, the true power behind the guild wears fine clothes, brews mediocre mead, and sits comfortably in a throne above ground. We've waded through the sewers and signed our names on Brynjolf's dotted line, but now it's time to look up from the gutter and see who casts the longest shadow over Riften. You might think the Thieves Guild answers to the Guildmaster, or perhaps to the abstract concept of greed. But if you follow the gold, it leads straight to a single stern-faced matriarch sitting in the banquet hall of Mistveil Keep. This brings us to our fourth brutally honest truth. Maven Black-Briar is the real Guildmaster. Let's be real for a second. The Thieves Guild in Skyrim doesn't operate as an independent criminal syndicate. It operates as a private military contractor for Black-Briar Meadery. Maven Black-Briar is not just a client, she is the CEO, and the guild is her human resources department for aggressive negotiations. Consider the evidence. From the moment you join, nearly every major move the guild makes benefits Maven directly or indirectly. The shakedowns in Riften. They keep the local merchants in line and fearful, creating an environment where Maven's influence can thrive unchecked. The Golden Glow estate job. Arangoth stopped selling his apiary's honey to Maven, so she calls in the guild to burn his livelihood to the ground. The Hunningbrew Meadery heist. Suburing Bjorn, Maven's only real competitor in the region, is eliminated so she can monopolise the mead market. Maven doesn't even hide it. If you speak to her, her dialogue is dripping with condescension and ownership. I have the Thieves Guild at my beck and call, she says, and she isn't bluffing. She summons you to her presence not as a partner, but as a servant. I have a job for you, she barks, skipping the pleasantries. She treats the Dragonborn, the Slayer of Alduin, the Thane of Whiterun, like a part-time intern who is late with her coffee. There is a core in-game fact that solidifies this power dynamic. The Black-Briar Meadery is the only business in Riften that is completely off-limits for guild jobs. You can steal from the Jarl, you can steal from the Temple of Mara, you can steal from the poorest beggar, but you never ever take a bedlam or fishing job at the Meadery. It is the sacred cow. This isn't professional courtesy, it's submission. The guild knows who feeds them. Let's dig into an obscure lore tidbit. In the basement of Maven's Manor, behind a locked door, master level naturally, you can find a letter addressed to the Dark Brotherhood. It depicts the Black Sacrament being performed. Maven isn't just satisfied with having thieves in her pocket, she keeps assassins on speed dial too. But the fact that she uses the guild for corporate sabotage, instead of just killing her rivals, suggests she prefers to break their spirits and their bank accounts before she breaks their necks. It's a cruel, calculating form of domination that the guild facilitates perfectly. Community debates often rage about who is the most evil character in Skyrim. Is it Alduin? Harkon? Miraak? A strong case can be made for Maven. Unlike the others, who are driven by prophecy or madness, Maven is driven by pure, unadulterated capitalism. She represents the banality of evil, and the Thieves Guild are her enforcers. They aren't Robin Hood's merry men stealing from the rich to give to the poor. They are stealing from the middle class to give to the ultra-rich. They are the agents of gentrification in the criminal underworld. Look at how the guards react to her. "Don't cross Maven Black-Briar," they whisper. Even the Jarl, Layla Lawgiver, seems blissfully unaware or willfully ignorant of Maven's true reach. If the Imperials take the rift during the Civil War, Maven is installed as Jarl. Does the Thieves Guild suffer? No, they thrive. Their boss is now the legal ruler of the Hold. The line between the law and the crime syndicate vanishes completely. The guild effectively becomes the state police. This relationship fundamentally changes the tone of the faction. In previous Elder Scrolls games, the Thieves Guild had a code of protection for the poor. The Grey Fox looked out for the beggars. Here, the guild looks out for the monopolies. When you poison the vat at Honningbrew, you aren't pulling a clever heist. You are destroying an honest man's life's work so a tyrant can sell more bad-tasting mead. It feels dirty. It feels corporate. There is a fan theory that Maven is actually a Nightingale herself, or at least knows about the Trinity. While there is no concrete evidence in the game files, her knowledge of the guild's inner workings is suspicious. She knows about the skeleton key, she knows about Mercer's location when things go south, and she seems unbothered by the supernatural elements of the guild's history. It's possible she washed out of the program, or simply decided that being a patron was more profitable than being a practitioner. Why sneak around in the shadows when you can pay someone else to do it while you sit by the fire? The tragedy is that the guild members think they are free. They talk about the family and the code, but they are just employees in a company town. They live in the sewer while Maven lives in a mansion. They risk their lives for scraps while Maven counts the profits. Brynjolf talks a big game about freedom and sticking it to the man, but he takes his orders from the biggest man in the rift. Even the rewards reflect this. What do you get for helping Maven? A leveled magical weapon? A pile of gold? Often it's just her gratitude and the promise that she won't have you killed. The Black-Briar Meadery key she gives you is symbolic. "Welcome to the family business," it says. "Now get back to work." The realization that you are a henchman for a corrupt oligarch is a bitter pill to swallow for players who wanted the romantic fantasy of the gentleman thief, but it fits the gritty, cynical tone of Skyrim's Riften. This isn't a fairy tale. This is a city where money talks and Maven Black-Briar has the loudest voice. The guild is just the hand that holds the megaphone, so when you are sneaking through Golden Glow, dodging mercenaries and burning beehives, remember who you are really working for. You aren't restoring the glory of the Thieves Guild. You're just ensuring that next quarter's earnings report for Black-Briar Meadery looks good. And speaking of leadership, if Maven is the Shadow CEO, who is the figurehead running the daily operations into the ground? That brings us to a man whose betrayal was so obvious, it's a miracle he wasn't stabbed in the back years ago. We have established that Maven Black-Briar signs the checks, but someone still has to stand in the cistern, look brooding, and pretend to lead. That man is Mercer Frey, a guildmaster with all the charisma of a wet sponge and the trustworthiness of a skooma dealer in a dark alley. This brings us to our fifth, brutally honest truth. Mercer Frey was always a walking red flag. From the moment you meet him, Mercer is practically screaming, "I am the villain," with every fibre of his being. He doesn't greet you with cautious optimism or even professional skepticism. He greets you with open hostility. "I don't care what Brynjolf says, I don't like you." Well, the feeling is mutual, buddy. He treats the arrival of a competent thief not as an asset, but as a personal annoyance. Why? Because a competent thief might actually notice that the guild's vault has been empty for 20 years. Let's look at his office. The man sits behind a desk in the cistern, surrounded by the poverty of his underlings, yet he owns a lavish manor in the city above. Riftweald Manor. How did no one in the guild question this? Hey, we're all eating mouldy bread and sleeping in a sewer, but the boss has a 2-story house with a private garden and a dedicated watchdog. It's the equivalent of a CEO driving a Ferrari while his employees are on food stamps. The financial disparity alone should have sparked a mutiny years ago. Mercer's combat style is another massive tell. He carries a dwarven sword of devouring. A sword? For a master thief? The Thieves Guild prides itself on stealth, on non-lethal takedowns, on shadows. Mercer walks around with a life-stealing blade that glows red. He is a brute masquerading as a rogue. During the quest, Speaking with Silence, when you accompany him to Snowvale Sanctum, he doesn't sneak. He walks right up to Draugr and power attacks them. He complains about your noise while stomping around like a mammoth. It's a gameplay mechanic, sure, but narratively it shows his arrogance. He doesn't need stealth because he has the skeleton key. He has God mode enabled, and it has made him sloppy. There is a core in-game fact that is often overlooked until the reveal: the skeleton key. Mercer has had it the whole time. The key unlocks any door, any chest, any potential. With this artifact, the guild should be the richest organisation in Tamriel. They should be robbing the White Gold Tower. Instead, they are struggling to rob a vegetable stand in Riften. This means Mercer was deliberately holding the guild back. He wasn't using the key to enrich the family. He was using it to enrich himself and keep everyone else desperate enough to follow him. Let's discuss an obscure lore tidbit found in his house. When you infiltrate Riftweald Manor, you find plans for the heist on the Eyes of the Farmer, but you also find something else: a disturbing lack of thief paraphernalia and a surplus of expensive, gaudy decor. But specifically, look at the bust of the Grey Fox. It's an item you can steal for the guild, Delvin's collection, but its presence in the game highlights the contrast. The Grey Fox was a myth, a hero, a symbol. Mercer is a landlord. The disconnect between the guild's heritage and Mercer's reality is stark. The community has debated for years how the other Nightingales, Carlia and Gallus, didn't see this coming. Gallus was supposedly a genius, a scholar. Yet he couldn't see that his best friend was a sociopath. The fan theory here is that Mercer was always the muscle of the trio, the one who did the dirty work, and Gallus and Carlia turned a blind eye because he was effective. They enabled him. They mistook his cruelty for pragmatism until it was too late. And then there is the curse. The guild members whisper about bad luck. Ever since Gallus died, they attribute their failure to supernatural misfortune. But the misfortune is sitting in the big chair. Mercer is the bad luck. He is embezzling the funds. It's not a curse, it's accounting fraud. It's hilarious that in a world of magic and Daedra, the downfall of the Thieves Guild is due to white-collar crime. Mercer's voice actor, Stephen Russell, who also voices Belethor, Clavicus Vile, and, well, everyone else, gives him a uniquely irritated tone. He sounds constantly annoyed that he has to interact with other human beings. This lack of camaraderie is fatal for a leader. A guildmaster needs loyalty. Mercer rules through fear and apathy. He counts on the fact that the guild members are too beaten down to challenge him. When the reveal finally happens, when Carlia explains that Mercer killed Gallus, it is treated as this massive plot twist. But for the player, it's a finally moment. We knew. We all knew. The man radiates betrayal. He sends you into Golden Glow alone against an army of mercenaries. He sends you to kill a madwoman without giving you the full story. He's constantly trying to get you killed so he doesn't have to pay you. Even his final confrontation is telling. He doesn't try to talk his way out of it. He doesn't try to bribe you. He just tries to kill you. He has no skills other than violence and theft. He is a hollow man, filled only with greed. The tragedy of Mercer Frey is that he could have been great. He had the skeleton key. He had the skill, but he lacked the one thing a thief needs more than agility: honor among thieves. He broke the one rule that matters, and in doing so, he turned the guild into a reflection of himself, hollow, greedy, and rotting from the inside out. So, as you stand over his body later in the story, watching him dissolve into the water with the eyes of the farmer, don't feel bad. You aren't killing a guild master. You're taking out the trash that has been clogging up the cistern for 25 years. But before we get to his demise, we have to deal with his mess. And the first major mess he sends us to clean up is a perfect example of how chaotic his leadership has become. We are heading to the Golden Glow estate, where stealth is apparently optional and arson is mandatory. Mercer Frey, our walking red flag of a boss, decides that the best way to punish a rebellious client is not a subtle message or a stolen heirloom. No, he wants us to burn down their livelihood. This brings us to the Golden Glow estate, a mission that perfectly encapsulates our sixth brutally honest truth. Golden Glow estate proves the guild is sloppy. The premise is simple. Aringoth, the owner of Golden Glow, has stopped paying his dues to Maven Black-Briar. He has barricaded himself on his private island, hired an army of mercenaries, and essentially declared independence. Your job? Infiltrate the estate, empty his safe, and burn exactly three of his beehives to send a message. On paper, this sounds like a classic heist. In practice, it is a chaotic war zone. The guild, which prides itself on being a shadow in the night, sends one person to infiltrate a fortress, guarded by 20 heavily armed mercenaries. This isn't a stealth mission, it's a suicide mission. If the guild were competent, they would have a team. Vex would handle the locks, Delvin would create a distraction, and you would grab the gold. Instead, you are the solo operator, expected to be a ninja, a safecracker, and an arsonist all at once. Let's talk about the stealth aspect. The mercenaries at Golden Glow are surprisingly perceptive. They have patrols, they have sightlines, and they are aggressive. For a low-level character, which you likely are at this point in the questline, this is a difficulty spike. You find yourself crouching in bushes for 20 minutes, waiting for a guard to turn around, only to realise that the game's stealth mechanics are, let's say, temperamental. One wrong step, one accidental kick of a kettle, and suddenly you have 12 red guards with scimitars chasing you into the lake. And then there are the bees. Oh, the bees. You're instructed to burn 3 hives. Not 2, not 4. 3. This seems simple enough until you introduce the chaotic element of fire in a video game engine. You equip your flame spell or a torch. You light 1 hive. The fire spreads. It looks beautiful. Then you light the second. And then, in the heat of combat, because you were definitely spotted, a stray fireball hits a 4th hive. You've burned too many hives. The objective updates. You have failed the optional objective. You have forfeited your bonus gold. Why? Because you were too efficient at arson? Because the fire physics decided to jump a gap? It highlights the absurdity of the guild's bureaucracy. We want you to commit felony arson, but please, do it within these strict OSHA-compliant parameters. It's micromanagement at its finest. Brynjolf scolds you later like a disappointed father. We're not butchers, he says. No, you're just arsonists working for a corrupt oligarch. There's a difference. There is a core in-game fact here that players often exploit. If you kill the mercenaries, it doesn't really matter. The guild talks a big game about no killing, but in Golden Glow the body count can be staggering, and as long as Aringoth survives or dies by your hand if he attacks first, no one really bats an eye. The code is flexible when it's inconvenient. This mission proves that the guild uses violence as a crutch when their reputation fails. They can't intimidate Aringoth with words anymore, so they have to resort to fire and blood. Let's examine an obscure lore tidbit found within the estate. In Aringoth's room, you find the Queen Bee statue. This is one of the collectible items for Delvin. But why does Aringoth have a statue of a bee? It implies a level of obsession or pride in his work. He isn't just a business owner, he loves his apiary. By burning it, we aren't just hurting his wallet, we are destroying his passion. It adds a layer of cruelty to the mission. We are bullying a bee enthusiast because he stood up to a bully. There is a fan theory that Aringoth was actually being manipulated by a third party. Not just the rival we learn about later, Carlier, but perhaps the Thalmor or another political entity trying to destabilize the rift. The level of security he hired is expensive. Mere rival thieves don't usually warrant a standing army. Someone funded his rebellion. Carlier bought the estate, yes, but the mercenaries? That's high-grade protection. It suggests that the guild is a pawn in a much larger game that they don't even understand. They think they are squashing a bug, but they are stepping into a geopolitical bear trap. The layout of the mission also highlights the guild's sloppiness in planning. The sewer entrance, because of course there is a sewer entrance, is barely a secret. It leads right into the basement. If Arangoth was so paranoid, why didn't he weld that shut? It suggests that the guild's intel, Vex's scouting, wasn't exactly top tier. She tells you about the sewer, sure, but she doesn't mention the sheer volume of guards. It should be a walk in the park, they say. Famous last words. And let's not forget the safe. Arangoth is cowering in his room. You can pickpocket the key, persuade him, or kill him. If you try to persuade him, he is terrified. I can't give you the key. She'll kill me. He's more afraid of his new partner, Carlier, than he is of the guild. This is a massive blow to the guild's ego. Their reputation is so tattered that their targets fear a lone Dunmer woman more than the entire organisation. The Golden Glow mission is a microcosm of the guild's current state. Loud, messy, and reliant on brute force rather than finesse. It's not a surgical strike, it's a sledgehammer. You leave the island in flames, bodies floating in the water, and the alarm bells ringing across the lake. When you return to Brynjolf, he pays you a pittance. Good work, lad. Is it? The island is on fire, the guards are dead, Arangoth is traumatised. But hey, Maven is happy, so the guild is happy. It's a stark reminder that effectiveness is measured only by client satisfaction, not by professional standards. And if you think burning down a bee farm was bad, wait until you see what we do to the local microbrewery scene. Because apparently the Thieves Guild hates competition in the beverage industry almost as much as they hate locked doors. The smoke from Golden Glow Estate has barely cleared, and already Maven Black-Briar has another target in her crosshairs. This time, it's not a rebellious partner, but a legitimate business rival. Honningbrew Meadery, located just south of Whiterun, is producing a superior product that is winning the hearts and livers of Skyrim. Naturally, this cannot stand. This brings us to our seventh brutally honest truth. Honningbrew Meadery is corporate sabotage, not thievery. Let's be clear about what happens here. We aren't stealing gold to feed the poor. We aren't reclaiming a lost artifact. We are hired hitmen for a monopoly. The mission, Dampened Spirits, tasks us with poisoning a vat of mead to frame the owner, Sabjorn, and get his business shut down by the Imperial Health Inspector. It is, without a doubt, the pettiest and most mean-spirited quest in the entire faction storyline. We meet Maven in the Bee and Barb, where she instructs us to meet a contact named Malus Macius at the Honningbrew Meadery. Malus is a disgruntled employee who wants Sabjorn's job. He is the quintessential corporate weasel, willing to destroy his boss's life for a promotion. The plan is to poison the pest control bait, which will then be used to clear out the skeever infestation in the Meadery's basement. But the real target isn't the skeevers, it's the brewing vat. The dungeon crawl through the Honningbrew basement is deceptively dangerous. You're fighting skeevers, sure, but also venomous spiders and a frantic alchemist named Hamelin. Hamelin is an interesting character, a former member of the College of Winterhold who was expelled for being insane. He has been breeding an army of super skeevers down there. It's a bizarre, horrifying little ecosystem beneath a pristine meadery. And what do? We kill him, not because he's a threat to the public, but because he is in our way. Once we reach the brewing vat, the act itself feels grimy. We pour the poison into the mix. We are actively contaminating a food product that will be consumed by the captain of the guard. It's reckless endangerment on a massive scale. We aren't just framing Sabjorn, we are risking the health of anyone who takes a sip of that mead. The tasting ceremony is the climax of this farce. Commander Caius arrives, takes a drink, and immediately feels ill. He spits it out, arrests Sabjorn on the spot, and hands the keys to Malus. Just like that, a man's life is ruined. Sabjorn is dragged off to jail, protesting his innocence, while Maven smiles from the shadows, metaphorically. The guild has successfully eliminated fair market competition. There is a core in-game fact here that stings. Honningbrew mead is actually better than Black-Briar mead. If you talk to NPCs around Skyrim, many prefer the taste of Honningbrew. It's sweeter, lighter. Black-Briar mead is described as harsh and bitter, much like its owner. By destroying Honningbrew, we are actively lowering the quality of life for every drinker in Skyrim. We are enforcing a monopoly of mediocrity. Let's look at an obscure lore tidbit. After Sabjorn is arrested, if you visit him in the Whiterun dungeon, he is broken. He talks about how he put everything into that meadery. He isn't a villain, he's just an entrepreneur who got too successful for Maven's liking. This quest strips away any illusion that the Thieves Guild are rebels. They are the establishment's goons. They are the reason why the little guy can't get ahead in Skyrim. The community debate around this quest often centres on the morality of the Dragonborn. How can the same hero who saves the world from Alduin justify poisoning a small business? It creates a massive cognitive dissonance. Role-playing a good thief becomes impossible here. You are forced to be a corporate saboteur. There is no option to double-cross Maven, no way to warn Sabjorn. You are locked onto the rails of corruption. There is also a fascinating detail regarding the poison. We use the venom of a frostbite spider mixed with other ingredients. But wait, Hamelin was breeding skeevers. The poison was meant for skeevers. By putting it in the mead, we're ensuring that the captain of the guard ingests rat poison. The fact that he only gets a stomachache and doesn't die is a miracle of Skyrim's forgiving biology. Or perhaps Malice watered it down just enough to be sickening but not lethal. Either way, it's a gamble with human life. After the deed is done, the Honningbrew Meadery is renamed Black-Briar Meadery West. The branding changes. The unique bottles of Honningbrew mead become rare collector's items. Literally, they stop spawning in the world. You have extinguished a brand. This mission also highlights the guild's shift from stealth to utility. Maven could have hired assassins. She could have hired mercenaries. But she hired thieves because she needed the job to look like an accident. She needed the veneer of incompetence on Sabjorn's part. The guild provides the narrative control. They didn't just break the law, they rewrote the story of Sabjorn's failure. And what is our reward? Access to a fence at the meadery, Malice, and a cut of the profits. But the gold feels tainted. Every time you see a bottle of Black-Briar mead in a tavern, you're reminded that you helped build that empire on the ruins of a better man's dream. This section of the guild's story is where the brutally honest aspect really hits home. The Thieves Guild is not cool. They aren't anti-heroes. In this moment, they are pathetic tools of the aristocracy. We have become the very thing the Grey Fox fought against, oppressors of the common man. But surely there must be a higher purpose to all this, right? A spiritual calling? Well, if you thought corporate sabotage was bad, wait until you see the retirement plan. Because apparently, to be a top-tier thief, you have to sign away your soul for eternity. We have burned hives and poisoned honest merchants, proving our loyalty to the almighty Septim. But as we climb the ranks, the price of admission shifts from gold to something far more intangible and infinitely more valuable. We are invited to join the inner circle, the Nightingales. It sounds prestigious. It comes with a cool cape. But let's read the fine print of this contract. This brings us to our 8th brutally honest truth. The Nightingale Armor is a terrible trade. The setup is seductive. Carlia the Exile brings you and Brynjolf to the Twilight Sepulchre to stand before the statue of Nocturnal, the Daedric Prince of Shadows. She tells you that to defeat Mercer Frey, you need the blessing of Nocturnal. You need to become a Nightingale. In exchange, you get a suit of armor that makes you look like Batman if he were designed by a goth warlock, and you get some unique powers. But here is the catch. You must pledge your soul to Nocturnal, not just for your lifetime, but for eternity. Upon death, your spirit is bound to the Twilight Sepulchre to serve as a guardian of the Ebonmere. You don't go to Sovngarde. You don't go to the far shores. You don't get to frolic in the hunting grounds. You're stuck in a damp cave, floating around as a ghost, protecting a portal to the Evergloam, until Nocturnal decides your contract is up, which might be never. Let's weigh the pros and cons. Pros? You get the Nightingale Armor, increases stamina, muffles movement, looks undeniably awesome. You get the Nightingale Blade and Bow, decent mid-game weapons but easily outclassed by high-level crafting. You get one of 3 powers, invisibility, a frenzy spell or a health drain, that you can use once a day. Cons. Eternal servitude. This is the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. The armor, while stylish, is statistically mediocre compared to what you can craft yourself with high smithing and enchanting. A dragon scale set with dual enchantments blows the Nightingale gear out of the water. Yet, for this mid-tier loot, you're selling your immortal soul. It's like selling your kidney for a sandwich, and not even a very good sandwich, maybe like a ham and cheese from a gas station. Brynjolf surprisingly agrees to this without a second thought. If it helps the guild, I'm in. He's either incredibly loyal or incredibly short-sighted. He treats his soul like a poker chip. But you, the Dragonborn, might have other commitments. You might have pledged yourself to Hircine, werewolf. You might be a vampire, Molag Bal. You might be the champion of Hermaeus Mora. Akatosh technically has dibs on your dragon soul. By signing up with Nocturnal, you are creating a bureaucratic nightmare in the afterlife. Who gets custody of the Dragonborn? It's going to be a celestial lawsuit. There is a core in-game fact that makes this even more frustrating. You cannot refuse. The quest, Trinity Restored, is mandatory to finish the thieves. Guild storyline. If you say no, the quest stalls. You stand in the cave forever. The game forces you into this pact. It removes player agency in a role-playing game about choice. You are railroaded into becoming a Daedric servant just to stop a guy with a sword. Let's look at an obscure lore tidbit. The Sentinels you fight in the Twilight Sepulchre, the Spectral Guardians, are former Nightingales. They attack you. Why? Because they have lost their minds. The darkness, it never ends, they whisper. This is your future. You aren't joining an elite club of spectral heroes, you're joining a group of people who are slowly going insane from boredom and sensory deprivation. Carlisle romanticizes it, calling it a communion with the shadows. The reality looks a lot more like solitary confinement. The community debate here is fierce. Many players headcanon that, because they are the Dragonborn, Akatosh will overrule Nocturnal's claim. I'm a demigod, your contract is void. But Nocturnal is a Daedric prince. She's older than Nirn. Her contracts are binding. The arrogance of assuming you can loophole your way out of a Daedric pact is exactly the kind of hubris that gets mortals turned into soul-shriven. Furthermore, do you even need the powers to defeat Mercer Frey? The man is a skilled swordsman with invisibility, sure, but is he a god? No. A well-placed arrow, a paralysis poison, or a Fusro dare would take him down just fine. The narrative insists that you're no match for him without the Nightingale edge. But gameplay-wise, you've killed dragons. You've killed dragon priests. You ate a giant's toe just to see what would happen. Mercer Frey is a speed bump. The idea that you need to sell your soul to beat him is a narrative contrivance to force the cool armor moment. And let's talk about the armor itself. It frames the face hiding your identity. It's iconic. But it's also made of what? Night? It's leather. It's fancy leather. The enchantments are fixed. If you get the armor at level 15, it sucks forever. If you get it at level 46, it's okay. This means you are punished for doing the questline too early. A Daedric artifact shouldn't come with level scaling terms and conditions. The ceremony itself is underwhelming. You stand on a circle, Carlisle chants some words and Nocturnal speaks. She sounds bored. My conditions are simple. Serve me. She doesn't even manifest a physical form, just a voice and some ravens. It feels like a Zoom meeting with your boss where everyone has their camera off. But the ultimate insult is that once you become a Nightingale, nothing really changes in the world. Guards might comment, "That armor, who are you?" But otherwise, you are still running errands. You're a superhero who still has to go collect 500 gold from Helga. The prestige is entirely in your head, so you walk out of that cave wearing your new cape, feeling cool. But deep down, you know the truth. You just mortgaged your eternity for a fashion statement. And to make matters worse, the very next thing you have to do is give up the one item that actually would make you the greatest thief who ever lived. You have defeated Mercer Frey. You have watched him sink beneath the water, the weight of his greed finally dragging him down. And from his cold, dead hands, you have looted the prize that started this whole mess, the skeleton key. Now, the quest log updates. It politely asks you to return the key to the Twilight Sepulchre to restore the guild's luck. And this brings us to our 9th brutally honest truth. The skeleton key makes you godlike, and returning it is mechanically the worst decision a thief can make. Let's look at the mechanics of Skyrim. Lockpicking is a minigame that ranges from mildly annoying to controller-breakingly frustrating. You rotate the pick, the lock shudders, the pick snaps with a sharp clink, and you lose a tool. You start again. Master-level locks have a sweet spot the size of a pixel. It is a game of patience and finesse. But then, you equip the skeleton key. Suddenly, the game changes. The key does not break. Ever. You can shove it into a master lock, torque it fully to the right, see it fail, and just try again instantly. It removes the failure state entirely. It turns every door, every chest, every display case into an open invitation. It is the ultimate quality of life upgrade. For a thief character, this item is the Holy Grail. It represents absolute freedom. No door is barred to you, and the game wants you to throw it away. The narrative logic is that the guild has bad luck without the key. But let's look at the player's reality. Does keeping the key give you bad luck? No. You still find gold in chests. You still land critical hits. Your game doesn't crash more often. Well, no more than usual. The Curse of the Ebonmere is purely a plot device. It has zero gameplay impact on you, the Dragonborn. In fact, keeping the key gives you better luck because you never run out of lockpicks and you open chests twice as fast. This creates a massive conflict between the story the game is telling and the game you are playing. The story says, you must be selfless and return the artifact to serve Nocturnal. The gameplay says, keep this magic tool and loot the entire province. It is a test of character, but not the one the developers intended. The real test is, do you care more about role-playing a loyal Nightingale, or do you care about convenience? For 90% of the community, Nocturnal can wait. She's an eternal Daedric prince. She has time. I have a master-level chest in a giant camp to open. There is a core in-game fact that highlights the absurdity of this trade. The reward for returning the key is the choice of one of 3 Nightingale powers: Agent of Stealth, Invisibility, Agent of Subterfuge, Frenzy, or Agent of Strife, Health Drain. These powers can be used once per in-game day. The skeleton key can be used infinite times per day. It is a passive, always-on buff that fundamentally alters how you interact with the world. Trading a permanent game-breaking tool for a cooldown ability that is slightly worse than a standard illusion spell is mathematically a terrible investment. Let's delve into an obscure lore tidbit. According to the in-game book The Nightingales and dialogue from Carlier, the skeleton key does not just unlock physical doors. In the metaphysical sense, it unlocks potential. It can unlock the hidden capabilities of a person, open portals to other dimensions, and bypass metaphorical barriers. Mercer Frey used it to unlock his own potential, which is why he could fight you and the other Nightingales simultaneously, and why he could infiltrate the vault without triggering the traps. The tragedy is that the Dragonborn never gets to use this feature. In our hands, it is just a really sturdy lockpick. We don't get to unlock our hidden potential to have infinite magicka or fly. We don't get to unlock the doors of perception. We just use it to steal sweet rolls from locked display cases. It is a waste of a cosmic artifact. It's like using Excalibur to butter toast. But even as a toast butterer, it is the best knife in the drawer. The community debate around the skeleton key heist is legendary. Many players treat the quest Darkness Returns as the end of the game, or rather a quest they will simply never do. Sorry, Carlier, I'm really busy. I'll get that back to the Sepulchre, eventually. This has led to the skeleton key being one of the most stolen items in gaming history. We aren't stealing it from an NPC. We're stealing it from the narrative structure of the game itself. We are hijacking the plot to keep the loot. And let's be honest, does the guild really need the luck? By the time you get the key, you have likely restored the guild to some prominence. You have gold, you have vendors. The bad luck seems to have vanished the moment you, the protagonist, walked in the door. The idea that the guild is doomed without the key feels forced. They were doomed because they were incompetent and led by a traitor, not because a magical lockpick was missing. Returning the key also involves walking through the Twilight Sepulchre, which is a tedious dungeon filled with annoying shadow puzzles and those spectral sentinels we mentioned earlier. It's a slog. The game actively discourages you from completing the quest by making the reward lackluster and the journey irritating, while making the item you currently hold incredibly fun. So, when you stand before the Ebonmere, ready to insert the key and close the portal, there is a moment of genuine hesitation. You look at the key, you look at the portal. You think about all those times you broke a dozen picks on a master lock that turned out to contain only 12 gold and a minor stamina potion. You realise that by completing this quest you are making your life harder. True thieves know the answer. The greatest heist isn't stealing the eyes of the Falmer. The greatest heist is stealing the skeleton key from the questline and never giving it back. You become the true master of the guild not by serving Nocturnal, but by outsmarting the game design. But, assuming you do follow the script, because we are completionists at heart, you are forced to reflect on the journey that brought you here. And no part of that journey was darker, wetter, or more horrific than the descent into the Dwemer ruin, where Mercer made his last stand. We have to talk about Erkenthand, and the nightmare that lives in the dark. The chase for Mercer Frey leads us away from the familiar dampness of the Riften sewers and into the cold mechanical heart of the earth. We find ourselves at Erkenthand, a sprawling Dwemer ruin buried deep beneath the snow. It is here, amidst the grinding gears and hissing steam, that the story takes a sharp turn from a crime drama into a full-blown horror show. This brings us to our 10th brutally honest truth. The farmer-blind betrayal in Erkenthand reveals the true depth of the horror we are meddling with. Up until this point, the Thieves Guild questline has been about people, corrupt business owners, backstabbing partners, annoyed guards. But Erkenthand reminds us that in Tamriel, the past is never dead, it's just waiting in the dark to eat you. As we descend into the Grand Cavern, the scale of the place is breathtaking. Bronze pipes the size of redwood trees stretch into the abyss, and the air is filled with the rhythmic thrum of active machinery. But beneath the mechanical noise there is another sound, a wet, clicking, skittering sound. The Falmer, the betrayed. We cannot talk about Erkenthand without talking about the tragedy of the Snow Elves. These were once a proud, magical race, rivaling the Altmer in their splendour. They built great chantry chapels and worshipped Auriel. But in their desperation to escape the genocide of the Nords, they sought refuge with the Dwemer, the Deep Elves, and the Dwemer, in a display of calculated cruelty that defines their extinct race, agreed to protect them only if the Snow Elves consumed a toxic fungus. This fungus blinded them, enslaved them, and twisted them into the hunched chitinous monsters we fight today. Erkenthand is a monument to this atrocity. As you sneak through the upper galleries, you see the Falmer in their element. They aren't just mindless beasts, they have a society. They have huts made of chitin, fences made of bone, and they farm the chorus, giant venomous insects, like cattle. It is a grotesque mirror of surface life, and Mercer Frey is tearing through them. We see the aftermath of his passing before we see him. Dead Falmer lies scattered across the floor, slashed open by the sword of devouring. Mercer isn't sneaking past them, he is slaughtering them. But the true horror is the indifference. To Mercer, and largely to the player, the Falmer are just obstacles, mobs to be cleared. But if you stop and listen to the audio design, the Falmer don't just roar, they whisper, they breathe. It creates an atmosphere of immense guilt and unease. We are trespassing in the home of a victimized race, chasing a man who has no respect for anything, living or dead. This leads us to the climax in the Sanctuary of the Ruin. We arrive at a massive chamber dominated by a colossal statue of a snow elf. It is one of the only depictions of the race in their original form left in Skyrim. It is beautiful, regal, and tragic. The statue stands with its hands raised, eyes turned toward the heavens it can no longer see. And what is Mercer Frey doing? He is gouging out its eyes. The eyes of the Falmer are two massive, priceless gems set into the statue's eye sockets. Mercer is prying them loose. The symbolism is so heavy it practically crushes you. The Dwemer blinded the Snow Elves physically with poison. Now, thousands of years later, the Guildmaster of the Thieves Guild is symbolically blinding their memory for profit. It is a desecration. It is the ultimate act of greed. Mercer doesn't care about the history, the tragedy, or the sanctity of the place. He sees shiny rocks, and he wants them. There is a core in-game fact here that adds to the tension. The room is filling with water. As you fight Mercer, the water level rises, threatening to drown you, Carlier and Brynjolf. It's a frantic, chaotic battle. But amidst the splashing and the sword clashes, the statue looms over you, eyeless and weeping water from its empty sockets. It is one of the most striking visual metaphors in the entire game. The weeping statue represents the sorrow of a lost civilization, washing away the filth of the current one. Let's touch on an obscure lore tidbit. In the book The Falmer, a study, which can sometimes be found in the packs of dead adventurers or on Dwemer shelves, scholars debate whether the Falmer are devolving into beasts or evolving into a new subterranean race. The organised ambush they launch in Erkenthand suggests the latter. They cut off your escape, they swarm, they are reclaiming the ruins of their enslavers. Mercer's intrusion is an insult they cannot abide. The collapse of the ruin isn't just a mechanical failure, it feels like the wrath of the Falmer themselves, pulling the roof down on the parasites who came to steal their last treasures. A popular fan theory suggests that the statue in Ikenthand isn't just a generic snow elf, but a representation of the Snow Prince, a legendary hero who fell in battle on Solstheim. If this is true, Mercer is defacing the grave marker of their greatest hero. It amplifies his villainy to a level that transcends simple theft. He is erasing history. The fight with Mercer is also the only time we see the true power of the Nightingale abilities used against us. He turns invisible. He teleports, functionally. He turns our own friends against each other. It shows what the guild could have been if that power were used for the collective good. Instead, it's used to defend a man prying gemstones out of a statue while the room floods. When Mercer finally dies and the water swallows him, it feels like the ruin is digesting him. The eyes of the farmer are looted from his corpse. You take them, continuing the cycle of theft, but the moment carries a heavy weight. You have the gems, but you have witnessed the absolute bottom of the moral barrel. There is no gentleman thief here. There is just a scavenger picking the gold teeth out of a corpse. Surviving Ikenthand leaves you wet, tired, and carrying 2 heavy gems that are arguably cursed. You have saved the guild from Mercer, but the guild is still in shambles. The vault is still empty. And to fix that, you realise with a sinking heart that the adventure is over, and the real work, the boring, repetitive, bureaucratic work, is just beginning. The Dragonborn has slain the traitor, communed with a Daedric prince, and navigated the horrors of a flooding Dwemer ruin. You return to the Ragged Flagon expecting a hero's welcome. You expect the vault to be overflowing with gold, the banners to be flying high, and the title of Guildmaster to be bestowed upon you with great ceremony. Instead, you find the same puddle of dirty water, the same depressed alcoholics, and a realization that hits harder than a giant's club. The main quest was just the tutorial. Now, the real work begins. This brings us to our 11th brutally honest truth. Grinding Radiant quests is mind-numbing torment. To actually restore the Thieves Guild to its former glory, and to officially become the Guildmaster, you must complete a series of reputation quests. But these quests don't just appear. They are locked behind a wall of Radiant jobs dispensed by Vex and Delvin Mallory. You must complete 5 small jobs in each of the major hold capitals: Markarth, Solitude, Whiterun, and Windhelm. Once you do 5 in a specific city, you get a special job to secure the guild's influence there. It sounds simple on paper. In practice, it is a descent into administrative hell. You stand before Vex. She crosses her arms, looking unimpressed as always. "I'm not going to babysit you," she warns, as if you didn't just kill a man who could turn invisible. You ask for a burglary job, she gives you one. Steal a gilded urn from the house of Clan Shattershield in Windhelm. Fine. You fast travel to Windhelm, endure a loading screen, sneak into the house, steal the urn, exit. Fast travel back to Riften, endure another loading screen, enter the Ratway, endure another loading screen, enter the flagon, and hand it in. "Good work," she says. "Here's 200 gold. Then you ask for another. Steal a jewelled candlestick from the house of Clan Shattershield in Windhelm. Wait. I was just there. Why didn't you tell me to get the candlestick and the urn? But you can't argue. You just do it again, and again, and again. The RNG, random number generator, governing these quests is a cruel mistress. You need jobs in specific cities to trigger the special quests. If you need one more job in Solitude to unlock the special merchant there, Vex will inevitably give you a job in Riften. Riften, the city you already own, the city where the guild lives. Why are we burgling our own neighbours? It makes no sense. This leads to a core in-game fact that every completionist knows all too well: the quick save shuffle. You stand in front of Delvin, you save your game, you ask for a job. Hit the Bard's College in Solitude, reload. Hit the Bard's College in Solitude, reload. Hit the pawn shop in Riften, reload. Hit the Silverblood Inn in Markarth. Yes, you accept the job. This isn't gameplay. This is fighting the game's code. You spend more time staring at the pause menu than you do stealing. It breaks the immersion completely. You aren't a master thief analysing potential targets. You're a disgruntled employee trying to manipulate the shift roster. Let's talk about the job types themselves. Delvin offers bedlam jobs, which require you to steal 500 gold worth of goods from a single city. This sounds like a grand heist, but the mechanics turn it into a chaotic looting spree. You run into the Blue Palace, not to steal the crown jewels, but to steal every plate, goblet and piece of cheese on the Jarl's dinner table. You leave the palace looking like it was struck by a very specific tornado that only targets dinnerware. You return to Delvin with a sack full of forks. That'll teach him, he says. Will it, Delvin? Will the Jarl really feel the pressure of the guild because he has to eat his venison with his hands tonight? Then there are the fishing jobs, where you have to pickpocket a specific item from a target. The target is usually walking around a busy market. You crouch, you wait, you pick the pocket. Easy. Unless the target glitches into a wall, or never leaves their house, or decides to sleep for 24 hours straight. Or worse, you get caught, and because you're the Dragonborn, the guards don't just arrest you, they try to murder you, all for a diamond ring worth less than the arrows you shot at them. There is an obscure lore tidbit hidden in the dialogue during this grind. As you complete these jobs, the flagon does change. It's a subtle, gradual evolution. New members join, mostly merchants. A fencer moves in. The water the water stays dirty, but the walkways look sturdier. Banners appear on the walls. It's one of the few instances in Skyrim where the world visually reacts to your grinding. However, the disconnect is that the original members, Vipir, Thryn and the rest, never lift a finger. They still sit there. You're single-handedly revitalising the entire criminal economy of Skyrim while they critique your technique. I used to be a shadow like you, Vipir probably thinks, as he watches you sprint out the door for the 50th time. The shill jobs are particularly nonsensical. Vex asks you to plant stolen evidence in someone's chest to frame them. Okay, dark, but effective. But sometimes you are framing people for crimes that don't exist. You plant a stolen gem in a beggar's pocket. Who is investigating the beggar for gem theft? The guards don't care. It feels like you are just bullying random citizens to meet a quota. The community frustration with this segment is palpable. It is widely considered the worst pacing in any faction questline. In the Dark Brotherhood, the Radiant quests are assassinations. Quick, violent, satisfying. In the Companions, it's fighting beasts. In the Thieves Guild, it's fast travelling. The ratio of loading screens to gameplay is heavily skewed. It turns the Dragonborn into a courier who occasionally crouches. And let's not forget the sweep jobs. Go to this house and steal these 3 specific items. You arrive at the house. You find the golden ship model. You find the ornate drinking horn. But where is the 3rd item? You search the house for 20 minutes. You check under the bed. You check the shelves. You check the inventory of the sleeping homeowner. Finally, you find it. A jeweled flagon that rolled under a table because of the physics engine. You aren't battling wits with guards. You're battling the Havoc physics engine. When you finally trigger a special job, the relief is overwhelming. These quests, like Silver Lining in Markarth or the Dainty Slode in Solitude, are actually unique, fully scripted missions with stories and unique mechanics. They are fantastic. They remind you of what the guild questline could have been. You manipulate records, you frame captains, you negotiate with influential families, you see the guild's influence spreading, you secure a fence in that city, the guards there start taking bribes. It feels like progress. But then, the mission ends. You return to Delvin, and you realise you still need to do the other 3 cities. You look at your quest log. 5 jobs in Windhelm. The despair sets in. You walk back to Vex. I need a burglary job. Don't get caught. I know, Vex, I know. This grind highlights a brutal truth about the guild structure. You are the workhorse. You are the only revenue stream. The Guildmaster title, when you eventually get it, is a participation trophy for enduring the most tedious administrative tasks in the game. You don't earn it by being the best thief, you earn it by having the most patience for loading screens. And yet, despite the boredom, despite the repetition, we do it. We do it because we want to see the shelves behind the Guildmaster's desk fill up with trophies. We want to see the merchants in the flagon. We want that final, sweet-looking Guildmaster's armour. We grind because we are thieves, and thieves want it all, even if it all requires 40 hours of fast travel. But even in the midst of this mindless burglary, there is a system at play that is actually clever, subtle, and incredibly useful if you know how to read it. While you're running around blindly looking for houses to rob, the guild has actually left you instructions carved right into the door frames. Amidst the chaos of burning apiaries, poisoning mead vats, and the endless soul-crushing grind of bedlam jobs, there exists a quiet, elegant layer of the game that most people completely ignore. While the guild leadership is busy shouting at each other, and the members are busy drinking their sorrows away, someone, presumably the few competent operatives left, has been busy carving a secret language into the very architecture of Skyrim cities. This brings us to our 12th brutally honest truth. Shadow marks are the only competent system left. For the uninitiated, shadow marks are small geometric symbols etched into the doorframes, barrels, and walls of houses across the province. To the average citizen or the passing guard, they look like scratches, weathering, or perhaps the idle graffiti of street urchins. But to the Dragonborn, once you know what to look for, they transform the entire world into a readable map of risk and reward. In a guild defined by sloppy planning and loud failures, the Shadowmark system is a masterpiece of subtle communication. Let's be honest, the intel you get from Vex and Delvin is often questionable. Vex will tell you a job is easy pickings right before sending you into a house guarded by a hired thug who hasn't slept in 3 days. But the Shadowmarks? The Shadowmarks never lie. Take the loot mark, for instance, a simple circle with a line through it. When you see this carved into the bottom of a doorframe in Solitude, you know that the homeowner is loaded. It bypasses the need for scouting. The mark tells you, yes, break in here, it's worth the bounty. Conversely, the empty mark, a simple empty box or sometimes a circle with a bar, is the single most valuable time saver in the game. How many times have you picked a master level lock, sweating over the tumblers, only to break into a house that contains 3 cabbages and a roll of paper? The shadow mark was there the whole time, screaming, "Don't bother, this guy is broke." It saves you from the disappointment of robbing a pauper. Then there is the danger mark, a triangle pointing down. You see this on doors and you know not to knock. It doesn't tell you what is inside. It could be a room full of guards, a necromancer, or a particularly angry dog, but it tells you to walk away. It is a silent guardian, a warning from a fellow thief who barely made it out alive. In a world where everything is trying to kill you, this little triangle is an act of altruism. There is a core in-game fact that many players miss for dozens of hours. The book Shadowmarks exists. Written by Delvin Mallory himself, it serves as a Rosetta Stone for this secret language. You can find it on a table in the Ragged Flagon or occasionally in the Cistern. It's a short read, but it recontextualizes the entire urban environment. It proves that Delvin, despite his grumbling and his questionable taste in decor, is actually a genius of logistics. He standardized a code for a decentralized criminal network. In an organization that feels like it's falling apart, the uniformity of these marks suggests that the idea of the guild is stronger than the members themselves. Let's look at the protected mark. It looks like a diamond or a shield. You find this on the door of the Black-Briar Manor, the Bee and Barb, and other establishments under the guild's and Maven's thumb. This is the do not touch sign. It's fascinating because it implies a code of honour, or at least a code of business. We don't rob our own. If you ignore this mark and steal from a protected house, you aren't just a rogue, you are a liability. The game doesn't physically stop you, but the narrative weight of seeing that mark makes you hesitate. It's the brand of the mafia. An obscure lore tidbit can be found in the placement of the cash marks. A diamond with a circle inside. These marks appear on innocuous barrels in cities, usually tucked away in alleys or behind crates. These barrels are not just random loot containers, they are thieves' caches. They contain levelled loot that respawns. Lockpicks, gold, potions, and sometimes enchanted daggers. These are supply drops left by other thieves for you. It's a beautiful piece of environmental storytelling. It makes you feel like part of a network. You aren't alone in the city. Someone was here before you, and they left you a care package. It's the only time the guild actually feels like a brotherhood looking out for one another. There is a prevalent fan theory regarding why the city guards never notice these marks. They are, after all, carved right next to the door handles of the wealthiest citizens. Surely a guard would wonder why every robbed house has the same circle scratched into it. The theory suggests that this is proof of the guild's deep systemic corruption of the hold guards. The guards do know. They're trained to recognise them. but they ignore them because the protected marks tell them which houses pay the bribes and which ones don't. The marks aren't just for thieves. They are for the corrupt law enforcement to know who is fair game for a burglary investigation that yields no suspects. Another theory, more mystical in nature, posits that shadow marks function similarly to thieves' cant in Dungeons & Dragons, a language that is cognitively invisible to those who aren't attuned to it. Perhaps there is a subtle illusion magic woven into the carvings, courtesy of the Nightingale influence, making them appear as natural wear and tear to the lawful eye. Only those with larceny in their hearts can focus on the geometry. It adds a supernatural layer to what is otherwise a practical system. The beauty of the shadow marks lies in their honesty. The Guildmaster lies to you, Maven lies to you, the Jarls lie to you, but the wood does not lie. If there is a mark for fence, a triangle with a line, there is a fence inside. If there is a mark for guild, a diamond, it is safe ground. It is the only system in the entire faction questline that works 100% of the time without a glitch or a betrayal. Navigating Whiterun or Riften by reading the walls changes the pacing of the game. You stop fast travelling, you start walking the back alleys, you check the barrels behind the inn, you feel like a predator stalking through the tall grass, reading the signs of the herd. It immerses you in the role of a thief far more effectively than any scripted conversation with Brynjolf ever could. It is also a reminder of the guild's reach. You find these marks in Ravenrock on Solstheim. You find them in small villages. It shows that the guild, despite its current slump, was once ubiquitous. These carvings are the fossils of a golden age, enduring long after the thieves who carved them have died or been arrested. They are the legacy of the Grey Fox era, maintained by the few who still remember the old ways. So the next time you're sprinting past the Temple of Kinnereth, take a moment to look at the doorframe. Read the story written in the scratches. It's a brutally honest story about who is rich, who is dangerous, and who is protected. In a world of chaos, the shadow marks are the only thing that makes sense. But as much as we appreciate the safety of a guild mark or the thrill of a loot mark, we cannot hide in the cities forever. Eventually, the path of the thief leads to the end of the line, and for those who signed the contract with the Lady of Shadows, the end of the line isn't a retirement home in solitude. It's a dark, echoing sepulchre where the lights never turn on. We have deciphered the secret language of the city streets and mastered the art of the heist, but every thief's road eventually leads to a dead end. For the members of the guild, that dead end isn't a jail cell or a hangman's noose, at least not for the lucky ones. It is a damp, sunless cavern tucked away in the mountains, a place where time stands still and the lights never turn on. This brings us to our 13th brutally honest truth. The Twilight Sepulchre is an eternity trap. We touched on the bad deal of the Nightingale contract earlier, but seeing the Twilight Sepulchre in person brings the horror of that agreement into sharp, terrifying focus. This isn't a glorious hall of heroes like Sovngarde, where you feast and wrestle forever. It isn't even a chaotic plane of struggle like Cold Harbour. It is a tomb, a silent, stagnant, unending void, and you have signed up to be its janitor forever. When you enter the sepulchre to return the skeleton key, the atmosphere immediately shifts. The air is heavy, the lighting is oppressive, but the first thing you notice isn't the architecture, it's the inhabitants. You're attacked by Nightingale sentinels. These aren't Draugr or mindless skeletons. These are the spirits of former master thieves, men and women who wore the armour, swore the oath, and served the guild just like you, and they are trying to kill you. Why? The game tells us they are sworn to protect the sepulchre, but listen to their voice lines. They sound frantic, they sound confused. "I am claimed by the shadows," they scream. They aren't guarding the place with a sense of duty, they are haunting it in a state of madness. This is the core in-game fact that chills the blood. The ultimate reward for a Nightingale is to become a hostile NPC in a dungeon. You lose your mind, you lose your identity, you become just another mob for the next protagonist to farm for ectoplasm. As you delve deeper, you encounter the Pilgrim's Path. This is a series of tests designed to weed out the unworthy. But look at the nature of these tests. One involves navigating a hallway filled with shadows that physically burn you. The darkness itself is weaponized. If you step out of the light, ironically, you take damage. This mechanic is unique to this location. It implies that the very entity you serve, Nocturnal, is hostile to life. Her realm, the Evergloam, isn't a sanctuary, it's a hazard. The embrace of the shadows isn't a comforting hug, it's radiation poisoning for the soul. Let's examine an obscure lore tidbit found within the sepulchre. On a skeletal corpse in the first chamber, you find Nistrom's journal. Nistrom was an adventurer who, along with his companion Anders, sought to plunder the sepulchre. His journal details their slow descent into paranoia and despair. But the kicker is that they weren't killed by traps immediately. They were killed by the sheer weight of the atmosphere. Anders goes mad and kills Nistrom. This, environmental storytelling confirms that the sepulchre exerts a psychic pressure on mortal minds. It drives people crazy. And this is where you're supposed to spend eternity? The architecture of the sepulchre reinforces this existential dread. It is vast, cold, and empty. There are no comforts. There are no libraries, no mead halls, no training grounds, just stone and shadow. Imagine the boredom. You're a master thief, a creature of thrill and adrenaline. You live for the heist, and your afterlife consists of floating in a dark room, waiting for someone to try and break in once every 300 years. It is a sensory deprivation tank that never ends. Then we reach the inner sanctum, the Ebonmere. This is the conduit to Nocturnal's realm. It is a pool of swirling darkness. When you return the key, the spirits of Gallus and Carlia appear. Gallus, your predecessor, is there. He seems relieved to be free, but his definition of freedom is disturbing. He says he is ready to become one with the Evergloam. He fades away, dissolving into the shadow. This sparks a massive debate within the lore community. What happens to the individual ego in the Evergloam? The fan theory suggests that becoming a Nightingale doesn't grant you immortality in the sense of living forever as yourself. Instead, it suggests that Nocturnal slowly digests your consciousness. You become part of the background radiation of her realm. You're one with the shadows, in the same way a drop of water becomes one with the ocean. You still exist, but you are gone. The luck that the guild receives is essentially the recycled spiritual energy of its former masters. You are fuel. The scene with Nocturnal herself is the final nail in the coffin. She manifests as a towering figure, aloof and indifferent. She calls your actions a business transaction. She doesn't care about you. To her, you are an employee, and the sepulchre is the office. But unlike a normal job, you can never clock out. Even in death, you're on the payroll. Consider the contrast with other afterlives. A Nord warrior goes to Sovngarde to drink and fight. A Dark Brotherhood assassin goes to the Void, which is also bleak, but at least Sithis is a primal force of chaos. A Nightingale goes to a guard keyhole. It is remarkably bureaucratic. You're an eternal security guard. You're a spectral bouncer standing outside a club that is always closed. The eternity trap becomes even more horrifying when you realise that the Dragonborn is likely a prisoner of their own success. You have so many Daedric claims on your soul. But the Nightingale Oath is a business contract, and business contracts in Tamriel are notoriously binding. While Akatosh might claim your dragon soul, your animus or your service might still be owed to Nocturnal. Imagine a tug of war over your spirit, with Nocturnal holding up a piece of paper signed in blood saying, "I have it in writing." Furthermore, the sepulchre is hidden. It is forgotten. No bards sing of the nightingales in the taverns. You don't get the glory. You fade from history. The brutally honest truth is that the Thieves Guild demands you sacrifice your legacy. The Grey Fox is remembered because he stole an Elder Scroll and rewrote history. The Nightingales are forgotten because their job is to stay in the dark. You are trading fame for servitude. The horror of the sepulchre is subtle. It isn't a torture chamber with spikes and lava. It is a torture chamber of stagnation. It is the horror of stasis. For a thief, whose life is defined by movement, agility and speed, being fixed in one place forever is the ultimate punishment. It is hell tailored specifically for the restless. When you walk out of the sepulchre after returning the key, the fresh air of Skyrim hits you differently. The sun feels brighter. The wind feels sweeter. You realise what you have just escaped, at least for now. You have returned the key, restored the luck, and doomed yourself to eventually return to that cave and never leave. The guild members celebrate. The luck is back, they cheer. They don't understand the cost. They see the gold flowing in. They don't see the spirit of Gallus dissolving into nothingness. They don't see the mad sentinels screaming in the dark. You alone carry the burden of knowing the true price of the guild's success. So, enjoy your time in the sun, Dragonborn. Loot every chest, pick every pocket, and drink every flagon of mead. because one day your heart will stop and your eyes will close, and when they open again you will be back in the pilgrim's path, watching the shadows dance on the wall, waiting for an intruder who will never come. But hey, at least you're the guildmaster now, right? Surely sitting in the big chair comes with some perks. Surely the power and influence you've built will change the dynamic. Well, don't get your hopes up, because as we're about to see, the title is just a fancy label for the person who pays for everything. The ceremony is over. The applause has died down. Brynjolf, Carlia and Delvin have all said their piece, praising your skill, your luck and your leadership. You have been officially crowned the Guildmaster of the Thieves Guild. You stand in the centre of the cistern wearing your new, slightly darker leather armour, the amulet of articulation resting heavy on your chest. You look around at your domain. Banners hang from the ceiling. The vendors are stocked. The vault is... well, the vault still looks pretty empty, but there's a pile of gold on the floor that wasn't there before. You have reached the pinnacle of the criminal underworld, and then the realisation sets in. This brings us to our 14th brutally honest truth. Becoming Guildmaster changes absolutely nothing. In a logical world, being the boss of a crime syndicate would mean you stop doing the grunt work. It would mean you sit at the big desk, Mercer's old desk, which hopefully someone wiped down, sit Black-Briar Reserve and point at a map while minions run off to do your bidding. You should be the one taking the cut, not the one earning it. You should be the Maven Black-Briar of the underground. But this is Skyrim, and in Skyrim, promotion just means you get a fancier title while doing the exact same job. The moment the ceremony ends, everyone goes back to their routine. Thrin leans against the wall, Naryn shoots his arrows, Bakel wipes the bar. No one comes up to you with a bag of gold saying, here's the weekly take, boss. No one asks for orders. If you walk up to Vex, she doesn't say, "What are your commands, Guildmaster?" She says, "I've got a burglary job, interested?" "Excuse me? I am the Guildmaster. Why are you offering me a job to steal a candlestick from a house in Whiterun? Shouldn't I be telling you to go steal the candlestick?" The dynamic never shifts. You remain the primary and apparently only field agent of the entire organisation. You are the CEO, but you are also the intern, the delivery driver, and the janitor. There is a core in-game fact that serves as the ultimate insult to your new rank, the tribute chest. This is the game's attempt to simulate the passive income of running a guild. Located in front of the Guildmaster's desk, this chest fills up periodically with golden gems, supposedly representing the cut you get from the other members' activities. Let's look at the math. You open the chest. Inside, you find 80 gold, maybe a garnet, a potion of minor healing. 80 gold. You are the Dragonborn. You're carrying weapons worth 5,000 gold. You just tipped a beggar more than this chest contains. The idea that this pittance represents the combined earnings of the entire Thieves Guild is laughable. It implies one of two things. Either the guild members are still incredibly incompetent and are only stealing loose change, or, and this is the darker theory, they are holding out on you. They are skimming off the top. They are giving you the boss's cut, which consists of the pocket lint they found, while they keep the diamonds. Consider the economics of the guild. You spent hours grinding Radiant quests to unlock the fences in Markarth Solitude, Windhelm and Whiterun. You expanded the network. You brought in the vendors. You restored the influence. And who benefits? The members. They get a safe place to sleep, cheap mead, and access to the best fences in Skyrim. And what do they give you in return? Training. That's right. If you want Vipir the Fleet to teach you how to pickpocket, he charges you. He charges his boss. Oh, you want to learn the tricks of the trade, Guildmaster? That'll be 3,000 gold. It is absurd. In any other organisation, training the leadership would be an investment. Here, it's just another way for the employees to fleece the CEO. You're effectively subsidising their lifestyle. You're the venture capitalist who keeps pouring money into a failing startup because you like the aesthetic. Let's examine an obscure lore tidbit regarding the Amulet of Articulation. This is the symbol of your office. It grants a bonus to speech, and, uniquely, guarantees that persuasion attempts will almost always succeed. The lore implies that the Guildmaster speaks with a voice that cannot be ignored. It is a powerful artifact. But by the time you get it, you have likely finished the game. You have already persuaded the guards, the jarls, and the dragons. It's a tool that would have been useful during the rise to power, not after. It's like getting a discount card for a store you just bought. The community has long mocked the Skyrim promotion problem. You become the Archmage, but you still have to fetch book ingredients for Tolfdir. You become the Listener, but you still have to kill random NPCs for Nazir. But the Thieves Guild feels the most egregious because the entire point of the faction is profit. The fantasy is wealth. And yet, even at the top, you're still hustling. There is a fan theory that Brynjolf is the true winner of the storyline. Think about it. Before you arrived, he was the second in command, stressing about Mercer, dealing with the debt, trying to keep the guild afloat. Then you show up, you do all the dangerous work, you kill Mercer, you talk to Nocturnal, you return the key, you rebuild the network. And what does Brynjolf do? He steps down. I'm not cut out to be a leader, lad. You take it. He hands you the title, which comes with all the responsibility and none of the power, and he retires to the cistern to hang out. He effectively offloaded the administrative burden of the guild onto you so he could go back to being a carefree thief. He played you. The Guildmaster title is a scam designed to keep the most productive member working while everyone else relaxes. Brynjolf is the smartest man in the room. Even the environment refuses to fully respect you. You sit at the desk. It's a stone slab in a sewer. It's damp. You look at your quarters. It's a bed in a corner. Meanwhile, Maven Black-Briar sleeps in a manor. The Jarl sleeps in a palace. You, the King of Thieves, sleep in a room that smells like wet dog and mildew. The glory of the guild is purely atmospheric. You haven't moved up in the world, you've just become the king of the rats. And let's talk about Ternilia, the fence. When you become Guildmaster, you get the Guildmaster's armor. Does she give it to you as a coronation gift? A token of respect? No. You have to give her your old armor and likely pay for upgrades or deal with the exchange mechanics. The transaction is purely business. There is no reverence. You're just a customer with a higher credit limit. The Radiant quests don't stop either. Vex and Delvin will generate infinite jobs until the heat death of the universe. This implies that the guild's hunger is insatiable. No matter how much you steal, it's never enough. The bedlam never ends. You've created a machine that requires your constant labour to function. You haven't built a legacy, you've built a treadmill, and you are the one running on it. Visually, the cistern does look better. The shelves behind the desk fill up with the larceny targets, the bust of the grey fox, the eye of the farmer, the Dwemer puzzle cube. It's a museum of your exploits. But that's the catch. They are your exploits. Where are the trophies from the other members? Where is the loot Vipir stole? Where is the prize from Sinric? The shelves are a testament to the fact that you are the only person working. It's a group project where you did 99% of the work, and everyone else put their name on the cover. The contrast with the Dark Brotherhood is interesting. At the end of that questline, you get 20,000 gold, a lump sum, a fortune. You can renovate the sanctuary, you feel rich. In the Thieves Guild, you get the potential to earn more money later. You get an opportunity. It feels corporate. It feels like a multi-level marketing scheme. Congratulations, you've reached the diamond tier. Now you can sell twice as much product. Ultimately, becoming Guildmaster forces you to accept the reality of the gameplay loop. The game cannot simulate a functional organisation where NPCs generate wealth for you, because then you would have no reason to play. So the narrative says you are the boss, but the mechanics say you are the worker. The dissonance is hilarious. You stand there, clad in masterwork armour, the chosen of Nocturnal, the slayer of dragons, and Delvin yells, "Hey boss, go pickpocket a beggar in Windhelm," and you do it. You do it because that's the game. But as we stand in the centre of the cistern, looking at our motley crew of underachievers, we have to admit one final stinging truth. We look at the armour we are wearing, we look at the history we have uncovered, we look at the code we supposedly follow, and we realise that despite all the posturing, despite the cool hoods and the secret handshakes, we are frauds. We are pale imitations of a legend. We have crawled through the muck of the Ratway, exposed the corruption of the Black-Briars, sold our souls to a Daedric prince, and realised that being the boss just means doing more paperwork. But as we look at the bust of the grey fox sitting on the shelf behind the Guildmaster's desk, a lifeless stone tribute to a forgotten age, we confront the final, and perhaps most painful, brutally honest truth. The Thieves Guild of Skyrim is nothing like the Thieves Guild of Cyrodiil. They are not the heirs to the grey fox, they are his twisted reflection. For those who walked the streets of the Imperial City in the Third Era, the Thieves Guild was something almost romantic. It was a secret society that operated under a strict, almost chivalrous code. The Grey Fox, the legendary leader, was a figure of myth who championed the poor. The beggars were his eyes and ears. Protect the poor, the code said, never kill. If you took a life on a job, you were expelled. You had to pay a blood price to get back in. It forced you to be a ghost, a pacifist, a true thief. Now look at Riften. Who are our allies? Not the beggars. We plant stolen gems on them to frame them. Not the poor. We extort them for protection money. Our allies are the corrupt Jarls, the monopoly owners like Maven, and the Dark Brotherhood. The Skyrim Guild doesn't protect the weak, it preys on them. It has mutated from a Robin Hood-esque resistance into a standard organised crime syndicate. We are not the merry men, we are the Sopranos. There is a core in-game fact that illustrates this decay perfectly. The no-killing rule in Skyrim is laughably flexible. Brynjolf tells you, we're not the Dark Brotherhood, but then he sends you to Golden Glow Estate where you inevitably slaughter a dozen mercenaries. Does the guild expel you? No. Does Vex demand a blood price if you kill a guard during a burglary? Sometimes she might dock your pay or demand a small fine, but often the game simply doesn't care. The moral absolute has become a line item in the budget. Violence is no longer a failure state, it is just an operational cost. This shift changes the fantasy of the faction. In Oblivion, you felt like a rebel fighting against a corrupt system, the Imperial Watch. In Skyrim, you are the corrupt system. You are the enforcer ensuring that the rich stay rich and the poor stay quiet. When you shake down Berzi Honeyhand, destroying his dwarven urn, you aren't sticking it to the man. Berzi is a small business owner trying to survive. You're the boot stamping on his face. It is a darker, grittier, and frankly uglier power fantasy. Let's examine an obscure lore tidbit found in the book The Grey Cowl of Nocturnal. This artifact, which defined the previous guild, wiped the wearer from history. Anyone who looked at the Grey Fox saw a stranger. It was a curse of anonymity. The Nightingales of Skyrim have a similar connection to Nocturnal, but notice the difference. The Grey Fox used Nocturnal's power to steal an Elder Scroll. He used the Daedra to achieve a human triumph. The Nightingales use their power to serve Nocturnal. The dynamic has flipped. The Grey Fox outsmarted the gods. Mercer, Frey and the Nightingales are subservient to them. We have gone from being tricksters to being cultists. The community debate on this topic is passionate. Many veteran players refuse to join the Skyrim Thieves Guild because it just feels wrong. They miss the nobility of the old ways. They argue that the Skyrim branch is illegitimate, a group of thugs who usurped the name but forgot the spirit. But others argue that this evolution is necessary. Skyrim is a harsh, brutal province. The Empire is crumbling. The dragons are back. A gentleman thief wouldn't survive in Riften. The guild had to become ruthless to survive the Fourth Era. In a world where Alduin is eating souls, stealing a sweet roll to feed a beggar seems quaint. Even the aesthetic reflects this. The Cyrodiil Guild wore soft leathers, hoods that blended in. The Skyrim Guild wears armour, actual, studded, reinforced leather armour. They are dressed for a street fight, not a heist. They expect to get hit. It signals a militarisation of the profession. We are soldiers in a war for coin. The Grey Fox's bust on the desk is a melancholy reminder of what was lost. We collected it as a trophy, a shiny object to display, but we missed the lesson it represented. We stole the symbol, but we left the ideology behind. We have the cowl, but we don't have the conscience. And yet, there is a strange honesty to the Skyrim Guild. They don't pretend to be heroes. Brynjolf doesn't give you a speech about social justice. He says, "I'm doing this for the coin, lad." Vex says, "I'm the best there is." They are professionals. They are cynical, tired, and greedy. They fit the world they live in. They are the rats in the walls of a crumbling empire, and they make no apologies for it. Maybe that is the ultimate truth. The Thieves Guild reflects the society it steals from. In the cosmopolitan, civilized heart of the empire, the guild was civilized. In the frozen, war-torn, dragon-infested north, the guild is cold and predatory. We are not the heroes of this story. We are not even the lovable rogues. We are the survivors. We are the ones who realize that when the world is ending, the only thing that matters is having enough gold to buy your way onto the last ship out of solitude. So, as we stand in the cistern, surrounded by our family of cutthroats and liars, we accept our place. We are the guild masters of a sinking ship, the kings of the sewer. We have the skeleton key, or we returned it like fools. We have the armour, and we have the influence. We have won. But as we look into the murky water of the Ragged Flagon, we don't see the reflection of the Grey Fox looking back at us. We just see ourselves, richer, stronger, and a little bit emptier than when we started. And perhaps, in the dark, honest heart of the Ratway, that is all a thief can ever really hope for. The echoes of our footsteps fade into the damp stone of the cistern, the shouting matches of the marketplace, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, and the roar of the dragons. It all drifts away, muffled by the thick ancient walls of the underground. Here, in the deep quiet beneath the city, the world slows down. Take a breath. Can you hear it? The steady rhythmic dripping of water from the vaulted ceiling. Drip, drip, drip. It falls into the dark pool below, creating ripples that spread outward, smoothing the surface of the water like a sheet of black glass. The torches flicker low, casting long, soft shadows that dance gently against the mossy brickwork. The air is cool and still, smelling faintly of old wood and the earth itself. Let the tension in your shoulders drop. Unclench your jaw. You've climbed the walls, picked the locks, and outrun the guards. The heist is over. The loot is counted. The danger has passed. There is no one chasing you now, no bounties on your head, just the safety of the shadows wrapping around you like a heavy velvet cloak. Imagine you are sitting in the ragged flagon, not as it is, but as it feels in the quiet hours. The fire in the hearth has burned down to glowing embers, radiating a gentle, sleepy warmth. The wooden beams creak softly, settling for the night. You can rest your boots on the table, lean back, and watch the dust motes float in the dim light. The city above is asleep, but down here, in the embrace of the earth, there is a peace that the surface world never knows. Drift along the canals of your mind, letting the current carry you past the worries of the day. Let the gold and the glory fade into the background. All that matters now is the quiet, the stillness, the soft, comforting dark. You are safe here. You are hidden. You are home. Sweet dreams.